Alexis Nikole Nelson, and we are here in my backyard in scenic Columbus, Ohio. Y'all want to see a huge mushroom? Ooh. My mom, who's like such an avid gardener, when she would work in the garden, I would usually be tasked with going and finding the edible weeds around our yard to bring in and add to dinner, lunch, snacks, what have you. She had developed a lot of her love of plants from her mother, my Nana, so she really got to pass that love of growing things and plants in general onto my mom, who then passed it down onto me. I'm using ocean water to pickle these beets. So I just developed this near obsession with snackable plants that really followed me all the way into adulthood. And in terms of social media, I mean, as a younger millennial, I was pretty much raised by the internet in part. I think internet was all of our third parent. Unbeknownst to me until way later in life, I'd kind of been honing, getting better at making good content. Things that people want to read, things that people want to watch, things that people want to share. And then when I had my marketing job at Bark, I really got to hone my skills there, because if you can make content that can sell things, you can honestly make good content that does anything else. I'd say a year or two into my time at Bark, I had started posting on what at that time was a Finsta of mine, because I was worried about bothering my friends and my family with all of my plant nonsense in my posts and in my Instagram stories. So I decided one day I'm just gonna make a plant Finsta, and I was deciding what name to choose, and I was lamenting to my boss. She also forages, and she was just like, oh, well, you were talking about how you feel like you don't see a lot of people who look like you out in the world of foraging online, so maybe it should speak to that. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right, I'm just gonna call myself Black Forager. And I started posting mostly essays and, still photos. And as time progressed, TikTok kind of came into the picture. And I just tested a million different things and got more comfy with video editing and having my face in content. And people really were resonating with all of the foraging videos I was putting up. I love having this yard. It's my happy place. So, starting actually right here, we have some violet leaves. Violets, of course, very famous for making those pretty purple flowers in the springtime, but a lot of people don't know that their leaves are also a great leafy green. Here we have some wood sorrel. The seed pods do explode, but they are delicious. I'm trying to see if any of them are ripe enough to, oh, that one just did in my hands. I ruined it. Oh, that one is just shooting seeds out right now. But they're tiny, so it's hard to see. But if you catch them before they're shooting seeds out, one, they look like little bananas, and two, they are so tart and tasty. The whole plant is really tart and tasty, but I feel like the mini bananas are the best. Let's see what else we have going on here. Some black nightshade, which is currently flowering. If you catch the greens before the plant is flowering, you can cook them and eat them. Here we have Spanish needles, Biden's bipinnata, which stays really nice and tender all summer. And I love their lacy leaves, though it does often get confused with ragweed. And it kind of tastes like cilantro and parsley had a baby. So if you're one of the cilantro soap people, maybe stay away from this one. But everyone else should enjoy it. And this is our big old patch of lamb's quarters. This is Chanopodium alba, white goosefoot. And I love that we just have these lush patches of it in the backyard. And if you just keep breaking off the tender tops, they will just keep growing through the rest of the growing season. Though I do let some of them go to seed so we can get their tasty seeds to make things like cereal, or you can pop them and add them into dishes like itty bitty tiny little popcorns. I love being able to come back here to come eat a snack, get a snack, make a snack when I just need to take a breather in between meetings. Being a creator in Ohio I absolutely love it because my content is nature-centric, and here I'm a stone's throw away from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. You know, I could be at the Great Lakes in a couple hours. I love what I have access to living here. I'm usually very hard pressed to leave like a foraging excursion with absolutely nothing, just because there's almost always like greens to be harvesting or seeds from things to be harvesting. And thankfully we just have so many native edible plants here in this part of Ohio that as long as you know what to be looking for, you can be finding things most times of the year. So, can you do it everywhere? Yes. Should you do it everywhere? No. A lot of, especially state parks, national parks, have rules put in place prohibiting foraging completely, or at least curbing it a great deal. If we want to talk about how much of my diet is foraged food, it depends on the time of year. This time of year, I can have entire days when everything that I am eating is foraged because there's so much in season, both like roughage, low-calorie things like lots of different greens, and also some sugary, higher-calorie things like fruit. My tagline, now I guess somewhat famously, which feels weird to say, is happy snacking, don't die. And honestly, when I first started filming foraging content, my partner, who is an attorney, was just like, you need to remind people that they need to stay alive and that foraging, as fun as it is a little scary sometimes. And I really just thought happy snacking, comma, don't die was such a perfect way to encapsulate that. It's still reminding you that what you're doing can be such a fun, joyous, and interesting activity, but it is reminding you to be careful. I am not afraid of eating things that are poisonous because I don't eat things unless I'm 100% sure of what they are, and I think that should be everybody's rule. Oh, here we have sochan. I am actually going to gather a few of these leaves to cook with our milkweed buds. And thankfully, a few of these leaves really do go a long way because they're huge and in terms of flavor. We're gonna go ahead and give these greens a nice little chopper-rooney so we can get ready to blanch them. I do not have amazing knife skills. Not that anybody should be worried that something terrifying is going to happen. I'm just a slow chopper, so don't judge me. There we go. And now these guys are going to go into some boiling water so we can give them a little blancharoony. Let's go ahead and get these guys into the water. Well, some of them didn't make it in, that's okay. And we're gonna go ahead and let those guys do their thing for about a minute. When your ice machine is broken, you use bag ice. There we go. And now I'm gonna start scooping these guys up. Blanching is great because it kind of breaks down a little bit of the plant fibers. It makes them this beautiful shade of green, and then plunging them into the ice water stops them from continuing to cook so they don't get too mushy. And let me cut the heat. Get some of the last of these greens out. There we go. Let these guys finish cooling down. Now I'm going to take these and wring them out of their excess water. And what we're gonna do with these is get some salt and quick pickle them because they quick pickle like a dream.
I'm Olivia and I'm friends with Alexis. I met her during college and we've just been friends ever since. Just here helping her prep with something that she, was out and about and foraging, and just make some tasty snacks. Sometimes we make full dinners together, and sometimes we just make, a little things here and there. So that's what we're doing today. The way I got into foraging was definitely through Alexis. I was not an outdoorsy person at all. You had to like convince me to go outside. And honestly, with foraging, you know, we kind of started going together at the start of the pandemic because it was a really safe way for us to hang out because we had the distance, we could do it with a mask. But then it was also interesting. Like for me, there was a point to being outside. It wasn't just to reach the end of a trail, but we got to like meander and mosey and like look at different curious things, and we got to have a lot of conversation about like what could we do with this in cooking. We've cooked together since we were in college, and so being able to incorporate all of these unique ingredients and try and see like what are they adjacent to that's normally used in the kitchen, I found super interesting. And it was nice because we just got to have fun and be able to hang out in like a very weird time in the world.
And there we go.
So what is it?
It is some vegan feta mixed with some foraged wild greens, and it is drizzled with a fermented Juneberry syrup and topped with fermented Juneberries.
Fantastic.
Turning a hobby into a profession is a joy some days, and honestly, it's a drag some days. Some days I wake up and I'm so excited that I get to just go outside and be my normal, silly, loud, curious, often hungry self. But some days you don't necessarily want to be doing the thing. You know, we all take breaks from our hobbies sometimes, but when it's your job, sometimes you just gotta do it anyway. I would say, honestly, my biggest hurdle has been my own mental health. There are a lot of things about social media that are ready to push your buttons. We're humans, and our silly little primate brains were literally not wired to be receiving this much feedback about ourselves. Like ever, and certainly not in a very short period of time. So I've just had to get better at putting up a barrier and like honestly getting a bit of a tougher skin.
Thank you.
I love you guys as pink bowls.
I'm so excited for the Juneberries on top.
The drizzle of the Juneberry, like choosing one of the fermented fruit syrups was a stroke of genius, Olivia.
Oh, I was like, you're the one that wanted something sweet on top. I did not contribute to this.
When you walked in, you're like, you need some.
Yeah, we need some right now.
I don't know what you're making, but put syrup on it.
Sugar.
So Alexis on camera, like out in the world persona versus Alexis at home persona are extraordinarily similar people. I would say there is like 95% overlap in that Venn diagram.
She's really not that different. I think the same type of jokes, the same songs, all of those things are the things that you definitely see when you hang out with her. And she's an extremely encouraging person, not just on camera, but also like in life. I know that's probably why she has like a lot of friends, because she's just such a positive person to be around. It's like a ray of sunshine. Having like a big personality, being able to show that, you know, on camera, filming herself, I think really plays into like why her content is so different than other foragers. Also, like she's always been into the environment, and I believe like even majored at one point in environmental engineering. I don't think that she does this because she wants to have a career in it. I think she does it because she's passionate.
Growing up, I knew culturally that Black people were not known for spending a lot of time in the great outdoors. I would go to these overnight camps in the woods, and if I was lucky, there would be another person of color at camp. And when I got to junior high school, I just remember especially a lot of the other like Black women in my class being like, oh, you were out hiking this weekend. Why? Like, por qué? Pourquoi? Like, what were you doing out there? That's not where we go. That's not what we do. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized how deliberate that was. After slavery was abolished, so many laws were put into place during the advent of the Jim Crow era, during the Reconstruction era, that like disincentivized people of color from a lot of different things, one of which was feeling safe spending time outdoors. And also a lot of those laws cut off the places where you legally could be spending time outdoors. If you were working on a plantation and you were foraging on that land before emancipation, people weren't really going to think twice about that. But afterwards, especially when some people of color, some indigenous people, black people were thinking, oh, I can support myself and my family now with these skills. A lot of like farmers who now needed sharecroppers were like, absolutely not, because if you're making your own money that way, how am I going to get you back and pay you pennies a day to sharecrop on my land that you were working on for free? So what happened is, starting in the South and then kind of spreading to the rest of the country really, trespass went from being a civil offense in which maybe, you'd get a verbal warning, maybe you would get a small fine, to suddenly becoming a criminal offense in which you could be doing jail time, in which the fines would be something that could put a family under, set a family back in ways that were really debilitating. And if you didn't own land, then suddenly where were you going to be foraging? The park system was also at its advent in the late 1800s. And so suddenly these huge swaths of land were also being parceled off, and people were being told, you cannot be foraging here even if you had been foraging here before. And all of those things added together really over the course of 2 generations took these groups of people who were very used to being very outdoorsy and having all of these skills like foraging, trapping, fishing, and systematically took it away from them. Because why put yourself at risk? Why put yourself at risk of violence? Why put yourself at risk of financial ruin, of being arrested and then not being able to find a job and really not being able to provide for your family? It wasn't worth the risk. So they stopped. And it doesn't take very long for generational knowledge to disappear. Once the last generation that was practicing it is gone, reclamation becomes really difficult, which is why when I was naming my page Black Forager, I was just like, I want people to know that this content is being made by a Black woman, but the reason why I want them to know that is much deeper. There are now several hundred years of us needing to reiterate that the outdoors are for us too. I feel very lucky to have landed in the community that we landed in. There are a whole lot of initiatives here in Columbus. Just in our neighborhood, we have a coalition called Franklinton Forest, which every spring, any neighbor that wants one can sign up to get a free native tree planting in their yard. And this particular neighborhood historically has been pretty poor. A lot of times, especially in lower income or in previously redlined communities, you see a lack of tree cover, and a lack of canopy directly correlates with higher temperatures during summer. It directly correlates with more heat-related illness and deaths, especially in elderly people in these neighborhoods. And so for me, being able to get more trees into people's yards, especially at no cost, is so important. We also have a local farm cooperative called Franklinton Farms, which took a bunch of the empty lots in the neighborhood and converted them into volunteer heavy farms. And you can do a choose your own price farm share bag. So every week we get produce that was literally grown within a mile radius of where we live. And we pay the full amount so that other people who can't pay the full amount have access to that fresh food. I am hoping to see more communities kind of taking hold of these spaces and making them more green themselves. Because a lot of those things are really hard to legislate on a state or a federal level, but you can enact a lot of change on a local level. I love being able to do things to raise funds for some of these different initiatives, like offering foraging walks. I just hope as I get older to be able to be involved in more of these types of projects.